Okay, Alexander, let's talk about what's going on with Andrew Cuomo, governor of the state of New York. And we have some kind of breaking news, I guess, where we have the representative Kathleen Rice of New York is now coming out and saying that Andrew Cuomo must resign. She tweeted this, and I quote, "The time has come. The governor must resign." This is coming from Representative Kathleen Rice, a Democrat, by the way. She's calling on Cuomo to resign. Yesterday, we had a third woman by the name of Anna Rook, who has come out and said that Cuomo sexually harassed her. She said this is according to the New York Times, but two things that separate this from the previous two accusations against Andrew Cuomo is, number one, she doesn't work for Cuomo. And number two, we have a photo. So they were at, from what I understand, a wedding party, I believe, a wedding reception. And Andrew Cuomo was putting his hands on her lower back, and then he became very aggressive with her. And we have the photo of him, and I'm putting up for our viewers to see, of Andrew Cuomo making a really silly face while he's putting his both of his hands around her neck and her cheek, apparently, I don't know, maybe going in for some sort of kiss or something. When you look at the photo, she genuinely looks terrified. I mean, this girl looks terrified, and she's, you get a sense of how much bigger Cuomo is compared to her in the photo as well, and she looks shocked at this. But this is bad for Cuomo. We also have another video that came out on Twitter, which is a flashback video where Cuomo was at a table with his daughter, and he was doing some sort of flirting with if you could even call it flirting. It's really creepy, with some journalist who was taking a video, a lady, a young lady, and he was eating a hot dog or a sausage, and he's like talking to her and saying, you have to eat the sausage as well and eat the sauce. It was. I'll put a link for that down below, and people can see the tweet. I'm putting it up right now, and if you want, you can play that video. It's also really, really creepy. But when you see the video and you look at everything, you can understand that Cuomo did think he was untouchable. He did have this sense about him that he was untouchable, and none of this should be surprising. I mean, the guy, just comes off as a creep from the get-go. But two more things, Alexander. They needed him before the elections. And I'm positive they knew about everything that was going on, but they needed him before the elections because they positioned him as some sort of anti-pandemic Trump. He was like the antithesis for the Democrats. He was the antithesis of how Trump was handling the pandemic. Trump was doing it poorly for the Democrats, and they needed someone to say, well, look at how he's doing it. He's the leader. He's the Emmy Award winner. And he's a Democrat. So they positioned him there, and they needed him for that. And I have no doubt that they knew what was going on. And I'm positive now that they have no use for him. And they're just kind of, disposing of him, I guess, at this point in time. Also yesterday, Chris Cuomo at CNN said that he's not going to be reporting on his brother as well. So where during the election, they had this routine where they were both, doing this comedy routine almost nightly. So I mean, this is terrible. It's creepy, but it's not surprising.
It's not surprising at all. Can I just say I'm not in the slightest bit surprised about it, because during the period of the last year of Donald Trump's presidency, as the pandemic was taking hold, I actually took quite a lot of interest in what was going on in New York, and I was utterly incredulous that Cuomo was being built up as this sort of anti-Trump figure who was, handling the situation in New York so well, when it was quite obvious to me that the truth was the diametric opposite. I mean, I'm not coming yet to the other allegations, but I mean, the way in which he was handling things in New York at that time, in New York State, was terrible. And this claim, that there's all this tremendous revelation about the fact that, he was concealing things about what was happening in the care homes and all of that. Well, I find that very surprising, because I knew much of all of this back in the summer course, it was very difficult to speak about it, but it was pretty obvious that it was happening. So it was happening, if you like, in plain sight then. And all of these other allegations that we're now hearing about, all these contacts that he had with these women, that seems to have been happening in plain sight also. Can I just say, if it had been a Republican, if it had been, let's say, Donald Trump, who had been behaving like this, we would have had it headlines, big story, in every single newspaper across the Union, and of course on every single big TV channel. And of course, Cuomo was behaving in this way precisely for the reason that you said, because he knew for a very, very long time that he could. But as you also rightly say, eventually and finally, things got so bad that with the election out of the way, the moment came when they could dispense with his services, and I predict that before very long he will be gone. It is a very interesting and revealing fact that the governors of the two biggest states in the new union, New York and California, both Democrats, are in severe political trouble. One, Cuomo, is now facing demands from the Democrats themselves for him to resign, and seems to be the target of multiple inquiries and investigations and allegations. And the other one in California is facing demands for a recall election. So I think that tells you something about the state of state governments up and down the United States. But the Cuomo affair, I mean, the only thing I find surprising about it is that people are surprised about it, because though I do not live in the United States and haven't been to New York for many years, certainly, I remember New York from, well before Cuomo became governor. Simply, from reading about things that were going on there, it was able to figure out a lot of the problems with Cuomo that people are saying, though not, I have to say, these specific allegations involving women, though I can't say they surprised me at all.
Yeah, so we have another story related to Cuomo, in that we have a tweet from Nancy Pelosi, where she was, in 2015, she was on a panel dealing with sexual harassment with Andrew Cuomo, and she tweets at Andrew Cuomo, talking about the panel and stuff. She said, "Too many women are sexually assaulted while in college," joined with New York Governor Andrew Cuomo to discuss why. And so my point on all of this is like much with Harvey Weinstein, where you had Hillary Clinton, who was, best buddies with Harvey Weinstein. That's fact. And Oprah Winfrey, best buddies with Harvey Weinstein. Everyone knew, but they were still buddies with the guy, and they were still taking up lunches with him and going on vacations with the guy, and everyone was praising him until it all fell apart. And you have the same situation now with Cuomo. Everyone, must have known what was going on. Everyone was still buddies with him, and it just ran its course. They needed him for the election. And they also needed Gavin Newsom. They needed them for the election. And now, when, you have now the third woman coming out, now they're just like, we can't deal with this guy anymore. We have to distance ourselves from him. I'm sure Pelosi will distance herself from Cuomo as well. What does it tell you when the real scandal here, the real tragedy, was the thousands, and I've heard 15,000 from some reports, the thousands and thousands of people that died because of either one, his mishandling, or two, the fact that he was getting lobbying money from hospitals and nursing homes.
Yeah.
I don't know which one it was, and
No.
I think we'll find out. But he has hired lawyers as well for this case. But I think that's just magnitudes more of a scandal. But it had to take this sexual harassment to bring him down. The other one wasn't going to bring him down, the nursing home. It had to take this. I think that says a lot about the Democrats and society right now.
Well, can I just, before we proceed, make one very quick observation? We've had a whole lot of scandals of, involving sexual harassment and sexual abuse, sometimes grotesque sexual abuse. We've heard of Harvey Weinstein, we've heard about Jeffrey Epstein, we've heard now about Cuomo. The thing that strikes me about them is that they are all to some extent and in some way or form Democrat scandals. I don't want to say that the only people involved in them have been Democrats, but generally they are. We haven't heard much of this from Republicans. We've not much information about Republicans. And of course, there have been attempts to connect Donald Trump to these kind of affairs, and they haven't succeeded at all. So I just want to quickly, bookend that, just to mention it. So now, on the subject of the handling of events during the pandemic, what I find very disturbing about all of that is that, as I said, I was taking a very great interest in what was going on in New York, because if you remember way back at the start of the pandemic, New York seemed to be very much the epicenter of what was happening in the United States. And it was absolutely obvious to me that Cuomo and de Blasio were grossly, indeed grotesquely, mishandling things. And it bewildered me, firstly, that there seemed to be this silence about this, and that there were all those attempts to blame Donald Trump for things that he wasn't ultimately responsible for, especially in New York, and to build up Cuomo as this person who was doing all of these things. And at the same time, to conceal a lot of the malpractices and misconduct, incompetence at best, that was actually happening in New York, and which was causing all those problems that you spoke about, all those losses of people that you spoke about. So none of this surprises me at all. The fact that it was being concealed, it was again being concealed in plain sight. Now, I don't know whether we're talking here about simple incompetence, or whether we're talking about financial corruption and lobbying. I could make guesses. I'm not going to make guesses, even though I have my very clear opinions about this on this program, because I know that everything is being disputed and there's going to be an investigation, and I think we should at least wait a while before we form a clear view. But that things were being done badly, and not just badly, but extremely badly, and people were dying as a result, that was obvious to me throughout the summer. But the media focus was not on that. It was always on something else. It was on actually completely ludicrous stories that were being told about Donald Trump. Like, do you remember there was all that business about him, supposedly telling people to drink bleach, and that this was going to, or inject themselves with bleach, and this was the way that they would fight the infection. And in fact, Donald Trump never said anything like that at all, but it got massive media publicity. So the media was focused in talking about that. Mr. Fauci was focused on all kinds of other things. Dr. Fauci was focused on all kinds of other things, all related to what the administration was doing. But this disaster that was festering in New York, that they weren't covering. Now, it doesn't surprise me that it's all come out now, but as you correctly said, it's been triggered by these other allegations. And I think the point has now been reached when it's become very clear, I think, to people in the Democrat Party that Cuomo is turning from somebody they had to prop up because they didn't want attention drawn on him, when they wanted it all focused on their narratives that they were constructing around the bad orange man. But they don't need to prop him up anymore, and he's become too much of an embarrassment, and so they're now moving to get rid of him. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. Even de Blasio is throwing him under the bus, even Bill de Blasio. And Cuomo got an Emmy as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Even de Blasio, who, by the way, just to say in advance, I am sure if you examine de Blasio very closely, you'll find all kinds of problems there also of a similar scale. I'm not talking about now the sexual allegations about that. I know nothing. I have no reason to think anything about de Blasio on that. But on the handling of the pandemic, my goodness, there's lots of things to say about de Blasio too. So yes, Cuomo under a bus. I wouldn't be surprised at all if de Blasio follows before very long also. And we will see what happens in California, where there are all kinds of problems, not just about the pandemic, but all sorts of other things too.
Yeah. What a mess. All right. We'll leave it there. Alexander Burkers, thank you very much. Guys, go to the Duran shop. Pick up some merch. Pick up some hoodies, sweatshirts, magic mugs. Hit the like button on the way out of this video show. And PayPal, Patreon, subscribe, Star Bitcoin.
Indeed. And look us up on our other platforms. You'll find links under this video, and also please check out our various other channels, links under the video also. And we look forward to you joining us for our next program.
All right, take care, everybody.